Father. Father, we just thank you for your Holy Spirit. Thank you for your presence, for who you are, and that you live in us. And I just ask, Father, that you would be with us in this class. It was kind of a hectic time getting here tonight. My brain can sometimes feel jumbled and trying to hurry, and just ask that you help me to just relax and calm down, and that you would just take me as a vessel and teach this class and help us all to learn this language. And we just appreciate you, Father, and love you, and we just ask that you would do great things through our lives in helping us to learn this language and getting into Scripture. In Yeshua's name, amen. All right. So, Raquel, if I can get you over here, you're going to write for me. I'll start out. So I'm going to do a really quick review on the Aleph Bet letters we've done so far. So this will take us all the way through the whole Aleph Bet, but we'll be very fast about it because we want to make sure we get to new content, right? Okay. So here I'm going to write an Aleph, and this will kind of lead the way for the size that we want to, and then I'm going to write the sounds like, or maybe most common sounds like in Aleph's case, because remember Aleph usually sounds like ah, so I can put an H there. And it can also take any vowel sound. So just depending on the word, like I mentioned before, the name or the word ish for man, obviously has that E sound in it, right? Ish. Okay, so go ahead and come on over. And we're just going to do really quick review. So there's an Aleph, and you can see Aleph on the page, and all of you guys have that. And before you write the next one, I just want to go over the page really quick. So just once again, maybe those who are just kind of getting introduced to the class here, it tells you the paleo word picture for the Hebrew letter, and that is an ox, strong, cheap leader listed at the top, and then of course you have your paleo book print, block print.
What page are you on?
This is page 12.
Because that doesn't show in the video.
Right, page 12, and you have your sounds like here, and then there's some practice. And so if you're doing this book, everybody that's in the class should be doing the book. And you write your Aleph, and then write the sounds like in English right under it. And then we've had the question, well, why should I write, I already know an A, right? But what you're trying to do is make a connection in your brain to what you know and what you're learning. And so we want to do that and make it real automatic. So we want to get it down so much that as soon as we see this Hebrew letter here,
it's like you see an A.
It's like you're looking at an A. Oh, ah. It's just automatic. That's where we want to be. We want to be where it's just automatic. And so that's why we want to practice. One of the things I'll mention, I know Sparkles is new in the class here, is you may want to go and run copies of this before you write in it, because then you can do more practice sheets, right? So just, or not, or you just write it on a side piece of paper. And so this is meant to run downward, fill in. And then we have the fixed letter usage, which we're not really doing a lot of focus on yet, and you don't have to know that yet. But I've been introducing you guys to the fixed letters so that you guys are, not shocked when you're like, well, what's that? At least I've kind of put that in your head of how the Hebrew letters function as fixed letters, because in Hebrew, of course, we've learned that you get a 3-letter root, right? You guys all remember that? It's usually a verb. It's an action word. And Hebrew forms sentences by adding letters onto that root word. Okay, and so just a little refresher here. And I won't go through every page like that, but I just wanted to go through the first one again so we're all refreshing. All right, let's write a bet. Some say bait. Write them close together. You're doing 22 letters and sounds like under them, so you got to be tight. Okay. And so bet is your page 13. Sounds like a B or a V. It has a fixed letter usage, which we won't review right now. Gimel and sounds like a G. That's page 14. Next page is page 15. We got a Dalet. Dalet sounds like D. If you want to just keep writing, you can just keep writing.
Things together. Oh, no.
Hey. Yeah, you guys can say it with me. That's fine.
Hey.
Oh, light is good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Hey.
Hey. Yeah, the Dalet has that little tiny bit that hangs over.
Yes.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And then the hay has that little space right here. Sometimes in book print there is almost no visible space. It's so easy to mix up with another letter.
Don't let your letters get smaller and smaller as you go down.
Alright.
I like that. Yes,
We
dear.
want the video to pick up the letters.
Yeah.
I like
So
the
good.
little helps because at some point a lot of them do look a lot alike.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
how that's
Yeah.
got room to breathe and the hay is like,
Breathe out.
that
Hay.
really helps.
Right.
Oh, that's a good. I've been frightened. Okay. Hey!
No, hay's like that, but the letter's like that,
It's
right?
sideways. Hey. Right.
But I like yours, Diane.
And then we have the Vav.
Oh, that messed up.
Are you keeping it?
Which is interesting because on the phone app, it's straight down.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's differences
yeah.
every, just like English. Okay, Zion, which was a weapon or an axe.
Totally space it
I
out.
love the shape of that.
So what's the
crooked
better-
T.
It looks like an
Oh,
axe.
yeah, yeah.
It's on there. Yeah.
Which isn't that far off from the bottom.
Zion, Z. All right, we got our Het. Het.
It's closed up.
And should we, do you have your song handy if we did the song after this?
I would just have to bring it up on YouTube. Yeah. it's
Okay.
pretty handy.
Or maybe Jason's able to
I brought it up on my phone and then I connected
endure
it to
it?
there.
Okay, we'll do
mirrored to
that
there.
after you finish writing, so.
Het.
Everybody say Het.
Het.
Like you're clearing your throat. All right,
Like you saying Bach.
we got our Tet. Transliteration is T. Page
No,
20.
I'm definitely not doing this on my line.
I didn't think you
Oh,
would.
okay.
Yeah.
Tet.
We got our Yod, which the word picture is a hand. To work or do. Yod is a prefix letter. It's a tense changer, changes the verb tense. And then, while she's just continuing to write, let's talk about a few things. And so this is a little bit of quiz. I'll have you guys give me the answers. You get one answer from one person. I don't want all three from one. What are three things we know about a root word in Hebrew?
Singular.
Okay, I got singular,
Masculine.
masculine.
Verb.
Past
verb.
tense.
It's a verb, usually, and it's
Past tense.
past. One person per answer. Past tense. All right. Thank you. Good job. And so, when we see our word in its normal form with no added letters, then we always know it's talking about a he, a singular male, right? And it's already a completed action. But then when certain things get added on there, that changes it. All right, where are you at? You're on. You got
What letter
Yod.
do you write for?
Oh, your name looks different than I've seen before.
We
Really?
got. Wait, did you skip a word? I got Yod and then Shin.
Yod, Kaf.
We got,
She
okay.
doesn't follow Yod.
We're on cough.
None.
Oh, I advanced in my book. I went the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yod. Ka. Okay,
Yeah.
I was looking at the paleo and
Okay.
it looked like a sheen. Do you see that? So I saw this and I said sheen. All right. Because
Okay,
it's
that's
the palm of the hand is
Yeah, but
the
you-
word picture.
Cough is more like a, I'm sorry.
What? Go ahead.
She squared it out, you mean?
Yeah,
Right, so it's a little squared
because
out.
that
It's
isn't,
more.
isn't that the 50 to C,
We've been doing a rounded
the
one.
noon?
Right. So cough, and then a cough is one that has a final form, remember?
Mhm.
Final form is used when?
At the end of a letter.
At the end of a word. That's why it's a final form. And so whether it's a added letter or whether it's part of the root word, if it's the last letter, it's always the final form. Kaf, sofit. Sounds like K. Okay, we got our lamed. Sounds like L. It's also a prefix letter, meaning 2 or 4. You don't have to have that memorized right now, but that's something you want to keep looking at so it starts to sink in. All right, we're on page 24, and we've got our. Are we on our new letters that we've? Let's see.
Not yet.
Yeah.
We're in the new ones because noon
Yeah.
was the last one, wasn't? Wait,
We're not doing
what was the last letter we learned last week?
It was noon,
It was noon.
but I got.
Lamed, mem,
No,
noon. Okay, so we
No,
aren't.
No, it was Bob.
We aren't.
It was
Hey,
good.
Bob.
it was
I
Bob,
mean, he
yeah,
said
it was
6
Bob was the
letters
last
a
last
week.
week.
Right.
So it
Well, the Bob was the week 1, and then
Yeah.
I think,
5, 6.
and then we did
Yeah.
8. So that was week 1.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8. So it is
Noon
noon.
was the last one.
So this is our last review letter, and so then I'll start spending a little more time on the new letters, okay? So noon has a sofit. Let's write the sofit.
Here's
there,
the
too.
sofit next to the
There's the mem. Oh yeah,
Like
you
the
guys
water can come down.
notice
from
that
one.
her mem is different than the mem that
Yes.
you guys have been learning.
Why?
Well, they rounded it, and that is a way that some write a mem.
Which one is the sofit, the rounded or the?
The square.
Sofit is the square one,
Okay.
and it's been.
More like that.
We've been using kind of more of a rounded one. Well, the app is sure showing it, and then this book also shows a rounded mem. You're kind of like a mountaintop.
Oh yeah. I've got,
It's
like,
more of a-
point.
Right. And that's where she learned from a primer book, and that's probably how they had it in that book.
Well, that application does it too. The right Hebrew.
Oh, is
It's
it?
pretty.
Uh-huh, okay.
So we talk about like the water, like being able to flow. M stands for mine. Mine was water, and so it can flow out. But then when it's mem sofit, when it's at the end, it got like capped off.
That's where I can
There's some
contain her.
little
Some
nuance.
memory tool
I
we
remember
had.
because it looks like a
Yeah.
straw coming out of it.
That's funny.
What works?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go now. We're slowing down, and we're introducing our last 8 letters of the Aleph Bet
Okay, the noon though is the last. Oh, it's the last one of last.
of last.
Yeah.
week.
So noon sofit.
Looks
If we were writing on a line of paper, it would drop down below.
drops lower,
The last one.
No,
and
funny
all
how
the
there's
sofits drop lower except for the mem, which is just squared off.
Yeah.
And the noon sofit could look exactly like a vav depending on the font that you're seeing.
Yeah.
So it's only that long leg that you notice comes below the line
Right.
that lets you know it's a noon sofit.
So the vav would just be shorter.
They look exactly like otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're gonna write a samic, and Raquel, you might just refer to the book block print, so we're sticking with the font of the book. Thank you. And it sounds like S. All right. And the word picture of a samic is a prop. Like you would have a plant that you would maybe put a stake next to so that it could lean against it or be propped up against it, and that's the picture, is a prop or a support. And the paleo word picture is like to lean on or to trust.
A samic, yeah. A samach is
Yeah, to lean
Smart.
on. Samic is to lean on. Yep. Okay, we got our ayin. Hold on, before we go to ayin. So we're on page 26, and that's your new letter. And so you just see there's no fixed letter usage. So it's pretty straightforward, and then you'll be able to fill out your page here.
And it's not even the most common letter. You see sheen being an S a lot more
Yeah, you
than
don't see
summit.
the summit near as often as the sheen.
Summit.
So that's an interesting thing. Like when we look at, well, why does Hebrew have two S's, right? And the theory is, and when you kind of research linguistics and language, that Hebrew has gone through kind of an evolution of language over time. It's changed its sound. I don't believe it originally had two S's. I think that the sheen was a sh sound and didn't sound like the S, and then the seen was something that we've come up with in modern Hebrew, and so Samic would have been your S sound. But now in modern, it can be sheen or seen. So that's theory, not saying that is fact. But that's like Tel Aviv, the Hebrew city Tel Aviv. Not that long ago, it was called Tel Aviv. It was changed to Tel Aviv. It used to be Tel Aviv, and so you see that the bet. You already had a V or a wa with the vav. You didn't need two letters to make the same sound. So, but that's what we kind of have in Hebrew today. Is we have certain letters that you can use two different letters to make the same sound. I don't think that was an original, but your b and your v ended up being put for the same letter, and so now that's where we're at today, that they're being used.
And you see that
Commonly.
just in language, in various languages. Linguistics is so fascinating. Just
F and PH.
F
When-
and PH, right?
Right.
The similar sounds, they just can evolve and change.
And like if you guys like a little bit of history while we do the class, one of the things that we can look at is like the Aramaic language. Because the Aramaic language has not gone through the change like Hebrew has. Aramaic has retained its ancient sounds and hasn't evolved like modern Hebrew, like we see going on in modern Hebrew. And so they have the exact same Aleph Bet. They have a 70 to 80% vocabulary share. So they're almost the same language. Some people don't realize that. That Aramaic and Hebrew, you wouldn't call them cousins. They'd be more like identical twins. There's very little difference between Aramaic and Hebrew. And of course, we can look at, and certain ones like Aramaic, we can look at some of the different cousin and sister languages and ones that they've been speaking it as a language for centuries and centuries or millennia and have not changed. And so even their pronunciations stay the same. And those are kind of like breadcrumbs to where we know that Hebrew was part of that same group. And that can help us get back to probably the more original sounding of some of those letters. And especially when we look at Aramaic, we can kind of get the idea of what those letters originally sounded like. Like even today in Aramaic, the vav is a wa, it's not a va. And so that was more of a modern development, I believe, of the vav. That it didn't originally sound like a va, it was a wa, but now today it's usually va. So a little bit of history and some language stuff that you can chew on. All right, so we're on page 27, and we got the ayin. And it kind of sounds like the word I, doesn't it? Ayin. It's easy to remember. You can picture an I, and there's your ancient pictograph. A lot like hieroglyphics, kind of, real similar to hieroglyphics. Not quite, so it's not a hieroglyphic, but it is a pictograph. And so every letter literally looked like a thing, like something that you see in life, something that you see in nature. And so every single letter had a meaning. And so it's really interesting when you think of how that, unlike like what we're familiar with English, we don't have that. But way back when, back in Moses' time, when they were writing these letters out, there was a definite connection for each letter to a concrete thing, right? Things weren't as abstract; they're concrete in Hebrew, and because of, it's really interesting when we take things from, and I'll just go ahead and I like to do little side trails here. We take abstract thoughts, and they're not connected to any nouns. And so abstract thoughts would be like love, right? Faith, hope. Faith, hope, and love. Those are kind of abstract. But it's really beautiful in Hebrew because those things that would in English be abstract, in Hebrew are connected to a whole bunch of nouns that indicated what those words actually looked like and gave it a concrete meaning that couldn't be changed. And that's one of the things that you see today is like, people just say, well, yeah, I believe so-and-so, and another person says, I believe that too, but they have a different definition of each word and actually believe a very different thing. But by English words, they believe the same thing. But in Hebrew, it'd be really hard to see the meaning change. And that's one of the things that, Satan in the garden, he says, has God really said? Satan has always been trying to twist and pervert the Word of God. We have so many copies and manuscripts of the Word of God, it's kind of hard to do. But because of English and other languages, it's actually become easier for the enemy to twist what the Bible says, because you can have the exact same thing. All you got to do is change the definition of a word. If you change the definition of a word, you completely change the text.
Right.
And so the enemy has been very successful in changing. Like, and I think I might have mentioned this in another class, we've all heard, hey, if you believe in the Lord, Jesus Christ, or Yeshua the Messiah, you shall be saved. And people say, well, I believe. But see, you actually don't believe in Hebrew, maybe, possibly, if your life doesn't line up. Because in Hebrew, and I don't have time to go into it, but there's so many nouns.
In class 1.
What's that?
We did do that one in class
Right.
1. Yeah.
But I didn't mention everything. Like it's the word for believe is connected to a nurse, or a woman who nurses her child, who supports and gives of herself to her child. It's related to the root word im, which is mother. It's related to the word for a pillar, and has the idea of being steadfast and faithful and immovable.
Mm-hmm.
And so, go figure, somehow we took the word faith and we totally disconnected it from the concept of faithfulness.
Wow.
When in reality, because it came in the gospel came in a Semitic language, it is whosoever is faithful will be saved. Not whoever intellectually believes. Because intellectually believing something doesn't produce being born from above. So, anyway, just throwing that in there. All right. I. And that is another one. We call it a silent letter, but it usually takes a vowel sound. Go ahead, Seth.
Is there any indication as to which vowel sound it's taking?
Okay, so most often you're getting more of the ah sound.
Mm-hmm.
Gomorrah starts with I'm, interestingly enough.
Amora, yeah. Some people think that the ancient Ayin might have even had a kind of a guttural, little bit of a guttural at the beginning of it. Without vowel points, it's memory, and so it's knowing a word and saying it by memory.
We'll give you resources for listening, so you can learn how to pronounce them.
I have more apps and more resources to put you guys towards, or to refer to you,
Right.
that will go on, but I'm trying not to throw too much at you at once, and so I'll be giving you some stuff for learning pronunciation.
Sure.
And, vowel pointing has its own benefit and its own place, so. And that talks about that in the book.
Are you familiar with vowel pointing?
A little bit.
Okay.
Don't know them. I don't
little
know them. Like,
dashes
you look
and
at it, you
dots.
see 27 versions of the same letter.
Mhm.
With a different dot here and a line there.
Right.
But it's those dots and lines that tell you.
It's a 5-point vowel system. There's long and short vowels, but it's just A, E, I, O, and U. So there's 5 vowels to learn. So it's not hard. But it's not necessary for reading. And learning the vowel points can really
Well, I was just curious
confuse learning Hebrew.
because I know that the points weren't used in the biblical Hebrew.
Right.
Right.
You know, so it's somewhere along the line.
Around the 10th century AD, they were added.
Right.
Because people had stopped using Hebrew as a common language. It was kind of what they would call a dead language. And so most had forgotten. And so in order to help people to know how to pronounce it, they added those.
But if you go to Israel and read a newspaper, there are no vowel points.
Yeah.
Books don't have vowel points.
Right.
People don't write letters to each other with vowel points, but you do see vowel points in like kindergarten.
And it's kind of like you've probably seen English words. Like I could write an English sentence here and remove all the vowels and only have consonants, and we'd be able to read it.
Yeah.
You know, like for father, it would be an FTHR, and your brain would just
Right.
automatically read father. So
Is just like, do people know what the vowels are? It's just a little line. That would be ah. 2 little dots. That would say a. That's what they do in the Bible.
just little dots under the letters.
So we're just not going to go into those because they're not original.
Okay.
But yeah.
And they really slow
here's a vav.
down your ability to learn Hebrew, to read Hebrew. It really slows it. It's good for pronunciation if you want to learn to converse, but it's going to slow you down 6 months to a year in being able to read Hebrew.
And the
We
vav.
don't want to do that. We want to
Right.
be reading Hebrew by the time this class is over. So we can't do the vowels.
The vav
and
becomes
make as
an
much progress.
becomes an O with a dot above it. Becomes an oo with the dot beside it.
All right, I'm gonna.
Those are what we mean when we say vowel points.
Right, and I have just a little section that talks about in the book why we don't use vowel points and a little bit of the history of them. If you just want to read on that. Okay, we got
So what
pay.
letter do I put for there? Just an I or what?
It's any vowel.
Okay.
We'll just leave it blank.
Yeah. And guess what the
Alright.
Hebrew word is for I? It's iron.
I already said that.
Yeah, did you? You said it stood for I, but it actually is the word for I.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Right. All right, we got pay. It's not a fixed letter, so it's not something you have to remember about how it gets used. And it has a final form as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, most of them just kind of open up, you know? They're just like,
yeah, there's
Drop
the final
down.
form of the pay. And the pay can also be a fe, so it can be a P or an F. Okay? P as in pie or F as in few. And going on to Zade. Zade is a TS sound, as in, I just like the word roots, I guess it's in the book.
I like Zade.
Roots.
yeah, Sadi's cool.
That's the hardest one for me.
Or like,
It's just like
Silent
saying nuts
T,
and then starting over.
to me, the Zade was
Nuts
really
Zade.
hard to learn how to
Nuts
write.
Zade.
I kept having trouble
Sadi.
writing it
Zade.
backwards and stuff when I was
Zade.
learning that. Yeah.
Sadi. Nuts. Nuts.
Nuts.
Nuts. Sadi. The end of nuts is the sound that starts.
Oh, yes,
Sadi.
Sadi.
Right.
Okay.
And
And
it
then,
just drops over
and it
too.
has a final form as well that just
Yeah.
goes straight down.
I don't know. I always thought like literally straight down.
Use the book. book.
Next week's gonna be interesting.
Not Sadi.
All right. And we got a kof or kuf. The idea behind the kuf is sunrise or sunset, the horizon, but also it kind of looks like a head. Like picture that being the neck of somebody and the back of a head. And so it's like the back of the head. Behind that which comes after or what is hidden.
Okay. And you said it was also sunrise?
It's also like a sun at the horizon.
Oh, okay.
And so those are both different word pictures that are given for that.
Is that where we eventually got our letter Q?
That's what I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, is that a lot of times people
What
put
I
a Q, don't
remember
they?
is it is where we get the Q, koof.
We like yous.
Sounds like K as in king, and so that's not a guttural, right? So
King,
when
queen.
when we're doing gutturals, we see that K. We actually are seeing that K quite a bit in a lot of different letters, and usually we'll throw an H in there with it when it's a guttural, and then this one's just it doesn't do a guttural. We got our resh and
Oh my gosh.
resh.
It was
Resh.
I know.
Looks like a dalet. Is that what you're thinking?
It doesn't have the little tail.
Yeah, and it's not square, it's rounded.
Okay.
It's rounded, and sometimes you want to pronounce that rounding a little bit when you're writing it, and that helps you not get confused. And think of resh, rounded. They both start with R. And so add little memory tools to your brain as you're doing that. And like I said on a previous week, I used to get confused, and now, like to me, a resh looks nothing like a dalet, just because when I look at them, it's like there's no confusion on seeing them anymore. Because
Because
I
a
looked
dollet
at
is a
them so
door, and that's like, that's the side of your
Well,
door.
It looks like
Sounds like R is in ring, but it's more like a ring. Ring. Ring.
So really,
I'm
is
not-
the letter R just a mirrored image?
Yeah, it looks like a
So-
mirrored image, and one is head, and one is the back of the head, from that kof and the resh. So, head, chief, top, what is first? And the resh, like in the beginning,
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Berashiyt. You see, I rolled that. I can do a lot better when I have another letter in front of it. Berashiyt. In the beginning, that's the first word of Genesis chapter 1. Berashiyt. Ba is in, and Reshit is the word there. And that's a root word of resh with a yod tav added onto it. Okay? And so Berashit, and that's that which came from the head, and so we have this idea of beginning, and we always think linear, but the Hebrew idea is that which comes from the top down, what's coming forth. And so picture, if you will, headwaters from snowy mountain-capped, a snow-capped mountain, and you got that fresh headwaters coming down from the top. And then as it goes downstream, it gets dirtier and dirtier and dirtier, right? And so, and sometimes we can look at that in a way like lost in translation, because we have, we do lose when we go into English from Hebrew. We are losing something, and the waters get muddied. So it's amazing that when you think of like the Mississippi River, if you went to the headwaters, it's got many tributaries, and they're coming from snow-capped mountains, and it's the most amazing water to drink at those original sources. But they say that if you were to drink Mississippi River water where it enters the ocean, you can die because it's so polluted, And I sometimes think of like that as spiritual, isn't it?
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah. And I think of spiritual things like that too, that things are given to us that are very pure, very much from God, and then
From the source.
and imagine this river that's flowing, you got your headwaters, and what is going on with the Mississippi River? I mean, people are dumping sewer in there, they're dumping chemicals in there, and so it may be the very waters that started, but it's been polluted, and sometimes, I say sometimes, we've seen a lot of it, religion is a lot like that. You got people going out there killing people in the name of God, killing people in the name of Christ, and things. It's like, if you ever read the book, he gave his life for his enemies. And so where you would get taking life from that, you have to pervert what was. And men have always been really good at taking what's holy, what's true, and perverting it. Right? Okay.
What? Can you tell me why they use the resh instead of the Aleph? Because they
For
pretty much head first.
head,
Chief.
first chief.
Oh,
So Aleph has the idea of strength,
yeah.
and Resh has the idea of top, or the
Okay.
head. And you think of like head or chief of a tribe or head of a household. Whereas Aleph has got more of emphasis on the strength of the ox.
The power. Did you say?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the resh more?
Resh is more like authority, and then Aleph would be
Okay.
more like power or strength. Okay, we got the Sheen, which is, the word picture is teeth, to devour or destroy. And of course, we talked about that. That can sound like sh, S-H, as in ship, or S as in sing. And of course, in modern Hebrew, and usually when you're not seeing vowel pointed, you don't see this, but sheen is on the dot's on the right, seen is on the left. Okay, sin, I think of sin on the left, sheen on the right. This helps me
She.
remember.
Oh, that's good.
Helps me remember.
Yeah.
Seen, that's on the left. It's not on the right. So. And so you'll see that little dot there. She is always right.
It's just a little memory tool. Oh, did I get my left? I did it left and right.
All right, and then we got Tav.
I'm missing one.
Are you in your book? You're missing a page?
So I didn't
No,
refresh.
I got the page, it's just that the sheen and the seen, are they,
It's the same letter.
Same letter,
It's the same letter,
okay,
and they don't have the dots because we're not using
okay.
the added pointings.
I think the song has both of them in there,
Right.
It
and
does,
so
Right.
that might
Sheen,
confuse
seen.
you.
Yeah, the song is just trying to teach you that this sounds like bet, bet, right?
Would you go set
Cough,
that
cough.
up to play while I
Oh,
finish?
yeah.
okay, so seen and sheen have the same meaning.
Yes, it's the same letter,
Okay.
just different pronunciations, right?
Right.
So it's not.
So,
And in that Aleph Bet video, sometimes it gives both sounds as if it was two
Oh,
letters, but
yeah.
it's the same
Yes.
letter. And so you end up with maybe 27 letters, but it was actually 22 letters, but you had some alternate soundings of them.
Yeah.
so.
Fei
Thanks.
Fei.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, but if you look at carefully, you'll see that the
it's just four, right?
letter is still the same.
Okay.
I have that right? I think I have them all circled. I think it's just four. They're just telling you both sounds.
Okay, so we got the Tav. I think that's interesting. The Tav, and I'll come over to the board here, is the sign or a seal. And so if you put a Tav into something, you're putting a seal, or your insignia, your seal. You would seal something. It's that marking. And so it's a sign or seal, and it's also the cross. I mean, if you look at that, I've heard some people say, well, the cross was pagan or something, and it's like, well, our Savior hung on one, and actually, just because people hijack something that was originally holy and make it unholy doesn't mean it's not holy. Think of the rainbow, right? The rainbow signified originally a covenant from God, and then you ask most people what rainbow signifies today, and what is that? LGBT, right? And so they've taken something that really wasn't theirs and they've hijacked that. And so I really disagree with the idea that, I don't know if you guys have ever run into that, but people say, we shouldn't have a cross, or shouldn't use the cross, or think, or even say the word cross. And it's like, but he died on a cross. And, just in case you get confused, that paleo, Tav, you look over there, it's a cross. It's the sign. All right?
Well, and when he was on the cross, he said, it is finished.
Right.
Right.
And it was the
And he
sign.
said, I'm not Alpha and Omega, the Aleph and the Tav,
The
the
Aleph
beginning
and
and
the
the
Tav.
end.
Right. The strong sign, the Aleph and the Tav. The strong sign. And so another thing that's interesting is if I put a Dalet, I better do a paleo Dalet here, but, well, you guys are doing modern. I'm not going to confuse you. I'm going to do, so if I take the Tav, and it looks like a cross, and I put a Dalet on there, that's the Hebrew word for religion, or we would say maybe a faith walk, okay? Because sometimes for some people religion has a bad connotation, right? But going back to true religion, if you will, And the dalet is a doorway, and the tav is a cross, and so true religion is the doorway to the cross. So that's interesting.
So you would pronounce that tav?
What's that?
The dalet and the tav, you would pronounce it tav?
Dot.
Dot?
Mm-hmm.
Dot.
Cause, yeah,
If
tav
my
is a T.
memory
Gotcha.
serves me
Oh, it's
correctly.
just a t sound, okay.
Yep, dot.
Oh.
And that's the Hebrew word for religion, a doorway to the cross. Everything else is the wrong way.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, those paleo pictures are fun, aren't they? All right, so I'm back on the Hebrew class number 3 itinerary, and let's just make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing here. So we just reviewed the letters. We went over the next 8 letters. We've touched on the paleo meanings. Write out letters on the whiteboard. We could have done that as a class, but I'm feeling like I need to, for time's sake, I need to keep the class moving. And you guys have been, if you've been practicing, then I don't need you to come up here and do it. But I might get you up here at some point, okay? Is anybody opposed to coming up and writing on here? Okay. That's all right. I know sometimes we're shy.
Oh, I'm already there. It just automatically accepted me.
Spell
Never mind.
English.
Thank
We
you.
were going to try to do
Guess
that
it knows
last
me
week.
now.
We didn't get to it. I want to go ahead and try to do that. And I had a few. And this was from using just letters out of the first 6 words.
The song is ready whenever you are, Sean.
Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and do our song.
Are we gonna do the slow
And you can.
version?
You want me to do the slow version instead? I did see it on
Okay.
there.
I like the little kindergarten classroom.
You like the little kindergarten classroom? Okay.
All right.
Tory Town.
And you can put the.
Don't watch this
Can you
play.
turn the camera to it?
Sorry.
And is our make sure our video's still going.
This is learning the Aleph Bet.
That's what I like too.
Aleph Bet, Bet.
Aleph Bet, Bet.
Gimel Dalet Hey. Vav Zayin Tet Tet. Yud Kaf Tav. Lamed Mem Nun. Samadayin Pei Pei. Tzadik Kuf Resh Shin. Shin Tav. Is a slower version. Aleph Bet Bet. Aleph Bet Bet. Gimel Dalet Hey. Vav Zayin Tet Tet. Yud Kaf Tav. Lamed Mem Nun. Samadayin Pei Pei. Tzadik Kuf Resh Shin. Shin Tav.
It just didn't left that part out. Just did it over and over.
Someone said they found one that's just 5 times in a row or something.
We'll just make sure we only go one more time through, huh?
I think it only does one more time.
We'll let it just do it.
Yeah. So it's cough, cough. It's not choff. It's cough. Aleph Bet Bet.
the
Wait a
confusion.
minute.
What are these extra letters?
Right,
I haven't
right.
figured that out.
Our aha
Okay.
moment's great.
So now I think, okay.
All right.
Bet.
All right, so
Okay,
let's have a start right here.
Okay.
Susan.
Susan,
Yep. And why don't you start with bag and write bag phonetically using Hebrew letters.
Can I take my cheat sheets?
You can. You can. I can put the page up here that has the.
I can help. Yeah.
Jason will help.
Bet, and Olive,
Yeah.
and Gimel.
There you go. So you want to
Per-
come write those?
Nice.
That was really good.
Geez, that was
But
really
I'm still
good,
using
Sue.
my cheat sheet.
I'm impressed.
That's all right.
Okay, Gimel. That's
The
the.
camel.
It is the camel. Gamal's camel.
We need to give you a different marker.
I was having some troubles
Let's
with
just
it.
give you the blue marker and see how that goes.
Oh,
We'll give the black one time to air out and rest.
or maybe not air out so much. Here's another black one.
That's,
Okay,
okay,
there you go.
that's the one that had, is this black?
Yep.
Black?
Mhm.
You want black?
Sure.
Okay. That's
All
the two
right,
like,
there you go. Good.
Aleph is,
Yeah, very good. Gotcha.
and Bet, oh dear.
That's okay.
Oh, Bet, oh, yeah.
I remember that with, like, you bet
And
your
sometimes
life,
it's
it looks
easier to
Nice.
recognize seeing them
Hang
and then
down.
writing them is its own thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's the,
Okay, so
what's the
let's
D's?
have you come up,
What's the what?
Diane,
What's the-
right?
Okay,
Getting
D's.
my names right here, and we'll do dab.
Oh, the D, that's what I'm.
Dab.
Okay, so how I,
Oh, okay,
how I
got it.
remember bet back. Is it looks like the game Hangman?
Oh, okay, bet looks like Hangman, that's
Yeah.
true, it
So
does.
I think about you bet your life.
Ah,
Nice.
memory tools.
You bet your life.
Okay, let's do the vowel with a different Hebrew letter.
She's got good writing.
Switch it up.
She should be your,
Yeah, she
Dang.
is.
She's always
She's an
describing.
artist too.
Right?
Let's take Aleph out of there,
Oh, okay.
and then we have a different letter we can, no.
She's overdone with that.
Good
I'll
try.
have you
That's our
write
other
I'm
vowel
gonna have you
sound.
write an iron.
Iron.
You got your iron yet, or are you still working on that one? I don't care if you cheat.
I think, okay, so I
This
I
is
know
looks
try-
like a
this is
line.
know
try-
the
two lines.
paleo,
Oh,
Right. So I'll
it's an
come.
I, right?
And I'm just throwing this in.
I'm trying to
Is
remember.
iron one of our new letters?
Yes.
Yeah,
It is, so that's why there's our iron.
Okay.
Oh, good.
So that's.
Dab.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
so you
let's.
can use ayin or Aleph, either one, huh? For that.
Okay.
Right, because they both can sound like off.
Do you,
I don't wanna do
you
it.
don't want to do it?
I
Okay.
don't wanna.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Sparkles, do you want to try dude? So that one throws you off because we have no E,
A silent E.
but we can phonetically spell it with 3 Hebrew letters, I think, pretty easy.
Which one do you want?
Oh, yeah, because
How
there's
about let's
another
do
letter that can
dude?
sound like, ooh.
Donuts.
So we're gonna forget about the E, because we can spell dude without having something for the E in there.
That's right.
Dalit, Bob, Dalit, dude. That's how you spell David.
Right.
So David
Oh.
potentially could be dude.
King Dude.
King dude. Yeah, King dude. Or another pronunciation would be Daweed.
So how would you know
Anciently.
whether it be David or dude?
But it would have meant something different
In the
then.
country.
Because when it's dude, when
If we
it's
say
dude.
Daweed, if somebody said go get Daweed today, they don't think you're going to get David.
That's true. That's also the word for beloved. Dode.
Right.
It can be pronounced dode.
David
Oh.
means
Dodi.
beloved.
Laha dodi.
Yeah, beloved.
He is my beloved.
The beloved or lover.
Also the word for uncle.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a useful word.
Alright.
The beloved
And
uncle.
Simon will have you come do bad.
Uncles always
Well, we
get
want
to have
you to do
more fun.
good, but you're gonna do good doing bad, I guess.
You were gonna do bad well.
Do bad like Michael Jackson?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
Just, Michael Jackson just doesn't really come to mind when you think of bad.
No?
No.
Yeah, nice.
Sorry, just, all the Michael Jackson fans just shut me off and signed off the
yeah.
video.
Oh, he wants to rewrite it.
Oh, he's gonna do his left
Oh,
hand.
he's going left-handed.
Oh, man.
Because a scribe would be left-handed,
Does he
because the
like
right
get
hand would
bonus points for
smear.
that or
I'm
something?
impressed.
Dang.
Nice. Bod.
He even like wrote it in the Hebrew direction.
Bod in Hebrew would be a staff or a stave,
Okay,
a rod.
I don't know if I've been able to pronounce that.
Right. So he did do bad.
Yeah,
But
but
bad.
But even pronouncing it that way is hard for me.
But,
But,
D.
Bod.
yeah.
but,
Bod.
so, but,
Not bod.
but, no.
Not too bod.
Very good.
Alright. So
Yummy,
there, we had a
yummy
little bit
eggs.
of practice on the whiteboard with, and that's just a good thing, and that's something that, as we go through Genesis, so next week we're going to start with Genesis 1, Berashiyt 1, and that's really exciting. I'm so glad to be moving on to that, because it's just so much fun getting into that class. And one of the things that, so we just continue to practice as we go through that, and you got your Hebrew letters, I want you to just practice with a pencil in your book, writing. Every time you got a Hebrew letter, you're just writing sounds like under it. Because you're wanting to lock that into your brain.
Yeah,
over and over and over again.
the app shows
Till
the
it
letter.
becomes second nature and you don't even have to think about it. Because that's when you start really excelling, right? Those little things like that, doing continually, is what's going to really move us along. So, okay. Hebrew, so we've done the 3-letter root, we reviewed that already. Hebrew basics continued, page 37 through 45. So if you'll turn to page 37 in your book. And we covered the first part of page 37 last week, but we stopped at the bottom of the page that's marked sentence structure. So you see that where it says sentence structure? Anybody who's watching us online, you can get a book at hallelujahversion.com and take the course online. So just message us, we can get you more info. Okay, so sentence structure. So this is fun. In English, we're subject, verb, object. SVO, right? That's standard. So, like, for example, let me erase some of this. Oops. I used the example of Bill hit Ted. I think, or was it Ted that hit Bill? I can't remember. What does the book say? Bill hit Ted. So in English, we have subject, so that's Bill hit Ted. Okay? That's your subject, the one performing the verb. The verb, here's your verb. Okay? The verb here is hit. Subject is Bill. He's the one doing the hitting. And then Ted is the object. He is the receiver of the action. Okay? Object. Receiver of the action. Now, remember in Hebrew, everything focuses on the verb, on the action being done. And so when we look here, you notice it says VSO. So viso, just everybody say viso,
So,
because that is going to help you remember sentence order. Just having that in your head. Viso, viso, verb, subject, object. And so in Hebrew, this sentence, Bill hit Ted, would be written like this. Hit, because the emphasis is usually on that verb, subject, hit, Bill, Ted. That's how that would be written in Hebrew sentence order, okay? Usually, there are exceptions to the rule, but that's the rule. That is very helpful when we're reading Hebrew because, you know, Hebrew doesn't have periods, commas, exclamation marks. It doesn't have spaces in between the sentences to let you know a sentence ended and a sentence new one started. And so here's something that's really helpful, is understanding Hebrew sentence order. Because when you see the verb, you know the sentence just started. Okay? And then you're going to look for your subject, and then you're going to look for your object, and anything else it wants to tell you about that whole situation. But then when you see another verb appear, you know that you started a new sentence. It's a little bit of a disconnect of one thought moving on to another. We don't have any other indicators that we're moving on to a new thought grammatically, except that we understand that order. So that becomes pretty important. Do you guys see how that would be really important since you don't have periods and all that? And without that, you can be a little bit lost. And you're reading, you wouldn't want just to pick up in the middle of a sentence and start a sentence there and move on. So that's really important that in Hebrew we understand viso. Everybody say it again. Viso.
Viso.
Verb, subject, object. Okay, let's go on to the next page, and that just continues that subject a little bit.
What page number?
38. Okay, and I'm going to say something here. So we're just doing some practice on basics. And I want to just encourage everybody here right now that what I'm covering right now, do you need to have this memorized? Is this where you should be at this point in the class? No, this isn't. This is just something you're starting to learn, okay? I'm going to continue to teach you this over the next weeks, all right? What do we need to try to have under our belt by next week? Aleph Bet. Meaning just recognizing how it looks and how it sounds. And having the best, and this is to our benefit, to have the best grasp on that you can. Because if you have a really strong grasp on that, the next class makes a lot more sense. If you're still struggling with Aleph Bet, it's going to be a little slower for you. It's going to be a little more difficult.
You just have to think
Does that
harder.
make sense? And so to go home and just continue pounding this Aleph Bet into your brain, right? Maybe not pounding. Let's think of a sponge. Let's soak it in. That's a little better. Let's soak these into our brain and take them in. Just keep practicing. Use the tools that you have. And what I'm doing now is I'm just introducing some basics of the language to you that you don't have to have memorized at this point. Okay. 38. We're going to introduce you to the Aleph Tav, or pronounced et. So who has heard of Aleph Tav? There's a lot out there about the Aleph Tav. Remember Jesus or Yeshua, he said, I am the Alpha and Omega, and that was Greek. But we know that he originally, in Revelation and the rest of the New Testament, was actually written originally in Aramaic. And I wrote a book about it. It's a 40-page book. I have some with me. They're $7. If you want one, I'll sell you a book.
I'll
So,
take one.
and it just goes into proving beyond, to my opinion, and I've had people that were hardcore Greek primicists of New Testament that have read this and go, I don't think you're going to be able to convince me, and have emailed me back and said, you convinced me. Because it's very well cited and documented, the Aramaic origin of the New Testament. And that's not something in almost all Western Bible colleges teach, almost every one of them, teach their students that the New Testament was originally written in Greek, and we can't get past that. And so it's been said so many times that we think it's true, it's like a given. And people like almost laugh at you when you say it was Aramaic. But it was Aramaic. And I actually proved not just from historical references, but prove it biblically. That I actually go into the text of Scripture throughout the New Testament and prove that it was written in Aramaic or in Semitic language from the text. And that it couldn't have been written in Greek. And that's really fun. So.
Wow.
It's really fun. It's an interesting, fun read. It never gets dry. I'm really impressed with that.
And I tried to, the hardest part about writing that book is I know that people have short attention spans in our day and age. And it could have been 200 pages long. I condensed it to 40 pages,
Wow.
which was the hardest part about writing it, because I really wanted it to be an easy, short read, right to the point. Okay, you guys notice, and I've explained this before, I'm writing in English because if I wrote Hebrew, your brains would start to swim, probably, right? But I'm trying to just teach you one thing, and so I use English, very unorthodox way of teaching, but it works. It works better than anything that I've ever seen.
We don't have to
As
deal
far
with
as-
how do you read a word you don't know how to read.
Right.
Exactly.
It's the subject that you're trying to get across right now.
Right.
I'm dyslexic. I walked out of school at a very early age. I did not get the components of the English language. It
Right.
confuses me to no end. So to get this, even in English, is great because I got
Right.
the subject. I got the idea.
Right?
So your brain might be wired for Hebrew right to left.
Maybe
Dyslexic.
you know what? I
Maybe-
got to tell what I can.
Your brain is normal,
Right.
and it wouldn't go wrong.
Right?
It crossed my mind this week that maybe dyslexics are just their brains are more anciently wired.
Right.
Wow.
They're closer to the first.
So all
To the
top,
source, to the brooch.
that's the word et. And so we got hit, bill, et, ted. I'm rewriting that sentence by a little bit, and we're being very specific. And the et always appears before the object. It's a direct object marker.
Just the first
occurs-
introduction, we're going to hear this over and over.
It occurs
and over.
hundreds, if not thousands of times through Scripture. We see the word, and it has, and you know, you've probably heard et is not translated into any word. There's not a translation under it. That doesn't mean it is mysteriously in the text, okay? And so sometimes people say, well, you know, every time you see the Aleph Tav there, then that represents Jesus or Yeshua in the text. Well, not. I know he said, I'm the Aleph and the Tav, and I believe that. But you can read too much into it. And if you were to go to like a native Hebrew speaker and say, the Aleph Tav has no functional purpose in there other than it just shows the Messiah, and they would look at you like you're crazy because that's their language. They know it, and they know that that occurs there in front of every direct object. It's a direct object marker. And so, not to discount anything, but I'm just trying to say is that it has a very functional purpose in Hebrew. You guys see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make another sentence up here, and we're going to pretend that I'm writing Hebrew, okay? And I'm going to write hit Naga et. I'm writing out of normal sentence structure in Hebrew. Hit, ed, et, ted, bill. I know that's a little bit confusing, right? It's probably kind of confusing, but we have a verb. We're identifying it. And it's in what's standard Hebrew?
The
Verb,
zone.
subject, object, right? there are exceptions to the rule. But you don't need to be confused because of et. Because sometimes we're going to get, once in a while, you're going to get verb, object, subject. You would think it was Ted hitting Bill, but no, Bill's always hitting Ted. It appears. Because the et tells us that Ted is the receiver of the action. So he's the object. And so even if I got it out of order, because I've got the et there, it's identifying Ted is the one receiving the action of that verb. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so what would be the need for doing that? Why would you do that? What would be the purpose to doing that?
You know, in English, we change our sentence order all the time too. And not to say
It's
that...
like Hebrew slang?
No, well, I think that you'll find that there is probably some common vernacular of the day and different slang. But it also could be making more emphasis on, I really care about what happened to Ted. Hit at Ted. You know, it could be like, hey, I want to just put focus, I want to talk about Ted right now, not Bill. You know, it could be that. That's my reading into it. I don't think things happen by accident in the Bible. I think that they're very purposefully written. And another thing too is, you know, if you took into account, and I don't get too much into gematria, and I think some people make too much out of it, but I also think that it could form something gematrically in there that may have a purpose.
Okay.
The Bible is so deep.
Conjecture.
That, you know, I don't know if you ever heard of Bible codes and stuff like that. And certain sequence of letters spell out certain words over and over and over again. Like you go through the Torah, and every 50th letter consistently spells out it? Trying to remember what word spelled out now. It's been so long since I looked at it. But it's really interesting how it's like it was written by a computer, like the sequencing of things, and even gematria stuff that sometimes appears there is really fascinating. So
Yeah, that
This
would
kind
change
of,
that.
reminds me of like Yoda from Star Wars.
Totally.
That
Oh.
Bill did.
I meant to say that.
That's exactly what it is.
If you want to know how to speak Hebrew, speak like Yoda.
Speak like
Yoda.
speak like
Yoda must have
knowledge.
been Jewish, like the actor. He was like, because he tends to speak in Hebrew sentence structure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. To know is yada, Yoda.
Oh.
His name is from knowledge.
Yada yada.
Yada yada yada.
All right. We got a few minutes here. Let's keep moving. I'll probably hold you guys till 8:10. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I'm just going to read from the page here on 38. I have endeavored to keep this written supplement very simple and basic, due to my conviction that Hebrew is best learned as if taught to a child, which we all are when starting out. This is the best for anybody to learn, in my opinion. The concepts, vocabulary, and lessons of Hebrew are taught in the order that they occur in Scripture. And so I'm kind of now prepping you for my next class, because as we go through Berashiyt 1, we're going to start with the first word and move through, and we're going to, as we do that, we're going to come across root words, and we're going to come across added letters or fixed letters, and we're going to learn those in the order they come, in the order they happen, okay? As we go through Berashiyt 1, we'll focus on these simple concepts. So here's your kind of prep for next week. We're going to focus on really three things. Identifying the root of the word and its meaning. And this is kind of how I teach Hebrew, is I keep it this basic. I want you to just be able to identify root words. Part of that is what I call the process of elimination. Okay? And we eliminate what's not the root word by identifying, hey, that's a prefix. I know that prefix. I see that prefix all the time. Hey, I know that's a suffix. And so my eyes may not go right to the root because it's still pretty foreign to you, right? But what you can do is really get those added letters down really well. And as you start, and that's not going to happen overnight, okay? It's not going to happen in 1 or 2 weeks for you. But as we go through this, and there'll be an aha moment in the Hebrew class. As we go through the Hebrew class, and I'm going to prep you for this, here's how it usually goes. We go through week 1 and week 2 and week 3, and I got people going, boy, I don't know, this is tough, and I'm just kind of confused, and I'm not getting it. And I see that happen. And it's really been amazing because it's almost like it happens simultaneously sometimes in a class. There'll be, I don't know if it's week 4 or 5 or whatever, but there's this point that everybody in the whole class seems to go, oh, I get it. And I understand how to read Hebrew. And it's really awesome. And all of a sudden things just click. They just click, and things that were confusing you all seem to fall in place all at once. And it's really awesome. And so I always have to encourage my students, don't quit, you can get this, stick with me.
Yeah.
I've already seen this happen before.
All ages too, so
Yeah.
don't try and write yourself off. I'm too
And
old
so-
to learn. It's not true.
And that's the thing, as we go through Genesis chapter 1, and maybe I'm moving away from what's on our itinerary, but I'd rather just kind of talk straight with you guys, is we're going to see, the first thing we're going to see is the bet prefix. Berashiyt. Bet is your buddy, is our memory tool, in honor with. He's very closely
He's
associated.
always in honor
okay?
with ya.
In honor with. Bet is your buddy. That's how I remember Bet. And so it's a, lets you know, what's that word, Raquel? It's not an adjective. It's showing the proximity of something.
Oh,
You've always told me this.
yeah, the mountain thing.
Yeah, anyway, well, if you think of it, you can
Thanks.
tell me.
Oh, I'm not good with
That's all right.
that either.
So we're going to see that, and then we're going to go through, and you may...
A
after that
preposition,
class-
thank you.
A
In, on,
preposition,
with,
yeah.
under. Anything related to the mountain. Someone taught me that in English class. If you can go under the mountain, around the mountain, through the mountain, over the mountain, on, in. Anything in proximity to a mountain,
By a
then
mountain.
that word is a
That's
preposition.
a preposition.
It was like, okay,
That's a good way
a preposition
remember
has
it.
something
I
to do with that mountain.
Probably wouldn't remember what a preposition is if you asked me right now.
Right,
Except
so.
for that you just
So bet is a preposition. It's in,
Right.
on, with, and we have other prepositions too.
Interesting.
Okay. And so we start learning
Thank
that. And you may not get that about bet right away. Or we're going to see Vav, or we're going to see the Vav Yod, what we call the Vav Yod combo. Or we're going to see just a Yod. And these are changing the tenses of verbs. And you're going to maybe at first be going, whoa, this is tough. But then we're going to see all those things again in week 2. And we're going to see them all again in week 3. And it's at that point in which you realize that we're not going too fast. And it might even feel like I'm going too fast for you. Okay? It won't be. I'm just not expecting you to get it the first time I say something. Make sense? So if we want to identify a word, we're talking about 3-letter roots here. Here, Raquel, give me a Hebrew word. Let's do
Shamar.
Amar.
Amar.
Is that spelled with an ayin or a olive?
I said Shamar.
Shamar. Let's do Shamar. All right.
Uh-oh. That is not showing up.
It's not, is it? All right. Let me do a different black marker. Oh no, roots are red, so that's all right. All right.
Shamar means to guard or to keep.
Shamar. I'm going to write a few other things on here.
Yep.
You don't have to know these, but Vayishmarnu. Vayishmarnu.
Vayishmarnu.
Vayishmarnu.
I was
All right.
closer than I thought. This
Yay!
afternoon. I was trying to pronounce that.
Awesome.
Nu, a suffix meaning we. Okay. Vav and Yod changes the tense. You don't have to know all this. But what I'm pointing out here is that is a very, 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 very common prefix. So common, and you know that Hebrew words don't actually start with Vav Yod. You're not going to find words that start with Vav Yod. They're always prefix, right? A Vav can start a word, and it's the word Vav.
Nail.
Other than that, there is
Nail or
almost
tempe.
no words under the Vav in a Hebrew dictionary.
So
Nu.
that's Vayi? That's
What's it?
prefix is Vayi?
Vai.
Yep,
Yeah,
vai.
vai.
Vayi. And then Nu.
A
Okay.
noon and a vav.
Nun and Vav, another very common suffix. Or it might be a Tav, another very common suffix. Okay, that would be like she did. Right?
So you're just giving us.
Examples. And so, when we see this in the text, and it's not color-coded for us, you know, it looks more like this. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my, I don't know what the root word is. Okay? And so, when I talk about learning to identify root words, and you might see shamar right in there and be so familiar with shamar, you know that word, and you got it, right? But you might not. But when you're like, okay, I already know that's the Vav Yod combo prefix, that means and leaves it in the past tense. Don't have to know that all right now, right? But just saying that you have learned your prefix, suffixes, and infixes so well that you just tend to identify them as soon as you see them attached on a word. And when you can separate those added letters, it leaves you with a root. And all of a sudden it's a lot easier to understand this word. Because with all those letters going on there, you're not getting that word. What does that mean? There's so many different vowels and sounds and different things going on there. I don't know what word that is. And so we learn to identify a root word through process of elimination. And getting our prefixes and suffixes down really well. Okay? And so we're going to be doing a lot of focus on that, and that's why we color code. The whole book's color coded because we're constantly identifying the added letters, and then we're learning what they mean. Any questions from anybody? We're all tracking good. You guys are awesome. Okay, and then building a vocabulary. So you guys all have, we'll be growing in a vocabulary, and there'll be like a growing vocabulary list every week. We're going to start knowing new words, and we're going to tuck those under our belt. How do we say run in Hebrew? Anybody know? Roots? Right, some of you guys know that, so that'll be like, oh, I got that. Hey, who knows what Elohim is? Anybody?
God or judges.
God. Yep. So Elohim would be God. There's a Hebrew word to put under your belt. How about Adonai? Lord. Okay. And so we start tucking we start owning these words. We have them, we understand them, we know them. there's a really good feeling as your vocabulary grows. Because when you start, and then you do get so familiar with the root, you might see the root before you don't even have to, you understand or see that these are prefix suffixes as you go through. It really starts to get easy. And so once you learn how to read Hebrew, the continuance of your learning is simply adding to your vocabulary. Because like by the time the course is over, you know your prefixes, you know your suffixes, you know your infixes. And Sparkles, how are you doing? You understand prefix, suffix, and infix? Most people do.
I've never heard infix.
Oh, infix just means a letter added into the middle of a word, and that's usually a vav or a yod.
Okay.
That sometimes gets added into a Hebrew word. And so we have some charts. Let's go to next page here,
Which is?
which is the prefix page, which is page 39.
Sean.
Huh?
Well, no, just because I was going through this today, and
Yeah.
I was wondering, is that a dalet or is it a resh?
Dalet is not a prefix. Where are you looking at?
He's on
41.
kind of the middle.
41?
I'm on page 39.
It was just a question though. You
Okay.
belonging to you.
Oh, that's a cough. That's a final cough.
Oh, it's a
okay.
final cough.
Right, final cough. Yep. That's
Sorry.
why it has a longer
That's
leg.
a good question.
No, that is a good question. You notice like the other Hebrew letters seem a lot shorter,
Yeah, okay.
but you're not seeing it next to another
Right,
letter,
right.
so that's why it was confusing. Okay, so we're on, and so there's your page 39. That's all your prefixes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 prefixes. When you understand those 11 prefixes and you got them down, you're really well on your way to reading Hebrew. That's your ability. You know, people make learning Hebrew so difficult. Oh, you got to do this for years or whatever. No, like how long does it take you to learn the usages of 11 letters? How long does that take? You know, not that long. But we keep practicing as we go. Look at page 40, and you got about twice as many suffixes to learn as you do prefixes, because 40 and 41 are both suffixes. And these are reference pages for you guys. And so without me like literally just going through everything here, and I could just tell you what you can read on your own, right? But you guys, it's my design or desire would be that as you go through this class, that you come back to these pages right here
Yeah, you'll want to bookmark
and
those.
put some time into these. And it's fun to, or even as you're going through Berashiyt chapter 1, and you're looking at that, oh, I'm going to go find that in the prefix and suffix chart. And I'm just going to start. You could start with this. This week, I'm going to learn one prefix and one suffix and really know what it means. Let's say hey. I'm going to remember that when hey occurs on the beginning of a word, it means the. Okay? Eitz is a tree. Ha-eitz is the tree. Everybody say that with me. Eitz is a tree. Ha-eitz is the tree. Now you practice with that hey enough, you're like, hey is the. I know that. Everybody knows that. Or vav is and. Everybody knows that. Right? They really become natural. You're not even, your brain stops struggling. At first your brain is struggling and then you feel the difficulty. Right? Part of my teaching Hebrew is to be a motivational speaker. So that you guys will keep going. And I always like to say that my Hebrew class goes a lot like a locomotive. It's really
Going
slow
uphill.
getting started. And some people who've had Hebrew learning in their background are like, man, this is moving too slow. Well, just hold on, because really shortly you're going to start learning things you never knew. Right? But you got to put up with the locomotive that is moving. Chug. But you know what happens when a locomotive it starts getting going? It's hard to stop and it goes fast, right? And that's how when we go through class number 1, now I'm just introducing next class, right? We go through class number 1, and you're like, if this is a speed that we go through Genesis chapter 1, there's no way we're at the end of Genesis 1, at the end of the weeks allotted for it, right? But the reality is like, first class, it might be all that we can do, if that, to get through verse 1, right? And then the second class, I might just do verse 2, or verse 2 and verse 3. But then all of a sudden, the next class, we do like 3, 4, 5, and 6. Because of the repetition of what you learned in those first ones, you already know, and those same words you already learned was half of the words in verse 3, 4, 5, and 6. Or more than half, maybe. You see what I'm saying? And so there's a snowball effect that happens as we start moving fast through the course. And so that was just, I guess, just something that's good for you to know, because I know you're going to be wondering those things as we're doing it. All right, where are we? We're page 42. What time is it? It's 8:10. I ran out of time. All right, I'm gonna just talk about this for a moment, and then we'll close the class. And we use the word shamar there, and so you can see some practice. And we will look at this just for a minute, if you'll bear with me, on page 42, and just go down. You can go back and review what it says, that paragraph above later, but just go down to where you see the root word, the red shamar, a sheen memresh. You guys all see that? Mm-hmm. Here it is, right here. I keep forgetting that I have your page right here in front of you. And then we're writing, so that's guarded, or more correctly, he guarded. How do we know it's he guarded, guys?
It's a root word.
Because it's a root word. It's in its default form, which is singular, masculine, and completed tense. Shimaru. Shmaru. Everybody say that. Shimaru. And that is they guarded. Because when Vav is on the end of a verb, that's how you say they did that thing. That action that just happened, that's how we say they did it. In Hebrew, we don't write a separate word they, because Hebrew is much more efficient. We just put a vav. And that vav at the end of a word, end of a verb, is a they. Okay? Let's look at this. Yishmaru. Everybody say Yishmaru.
Yishmaru.
Yishmaru, and you can see the color code. They is still there, so there's the u part, right, at the end of the word, but we added a y on the front of the word, and that is a tense changer, a verb tense changer. And so now we just said, they shall or they will guard. Make sense?
It will.
It will, but you're seeing the concept,
Yep.
even though you don't maybe have those memorized. Okay, now look, this word keeps growing, doesn't it? Vayishmaru.
Vaishmaru.
Vayishmaru. And they guarded. And remember, the yod's there, which is a tense changer, but we didn't change the tense. It's past tense. You guys see that? You're not going to remember this necessarily this time, but the Vav and Yod both change the tense. It's 2 negatives equals a positive, right? They cancel each other out. It stays in the past tense. And so now we got and they guarded, and then one more. Vishmaru. Vishmaru. And they shall guard. Because there's not a Yod to cancel out the tense change of the Vav, and that's just an example of how Hebrew is functioning, though you don't know all those prefixes and suffixes.
And this is way easier because the way I learned was I had to take each verb and then memorize the whole
Memorize
chart
a chart.
for every
Right.
single verb instead of realizing that, oh, just that one letter always reverses the tense.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay,
I would never have been able to do that.
Yeah.
I
right?
would never been able to retain any of that.
I know. It needs to make really simple common sense. Okay, so let's look at the homework, review that really quick. Fill out your worksheets. That's the last 8 vowels, or I mean not vowels, but letters. See, my brain's ready to quit too. Last 8 Hebrew letters of the Aleph Bet. So, and that only takes a few minutes, guys. Right? It really does. Just do some practice.
Each day.
I ask that you do a daily thing because I want you to succeed. 6 days of 10 minutes will accomplish 3 to 5 times more learning than 1 day of 60 minutes, even though they both total 60. Your daily practice is so much more powerful than I haven't done anything all week and I'm going to spend 1 hour now and make up for it. That's good. At least you do that. That's good. But it's not going to make up for a daily practice. So please, daily. This is really, if you want to get the language, you got to do a daily thing, okay? So that will help us keep up. Review the pages 37 through 45. Write out Samach and Tav. Continue watching Aleph Bet. And get acquainted with your flashcards. You guys notice I'll say this last thing. I know I'm already 5 minutes over the time I said I was going to let you guys go. But the last thing I'll just say is start out with your Aleph Bet, but then it goes into some prefix practice in your flashcards, and that's a really good way to learn this, right? So go through your flashcards. It's going to show you, you're going to practice the hey, the yod, the vav, different prefixes and suffixes. And then when you get to the larger flashcards, that's more advanced, and that's a lot of verb practice. And that's really good as well, but that probably should wait till later on in the course. I want you to focus on those simple ones for now. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed
Thank you,
the
Sean.
class.